I saw this animation and I thought it would be a great idea to CSS it. So let's do just that. We're going to start with a number of tiles, which is 10, and a number of faces, which is going to be just 5, because we don't use the bottom back one, whatever. We have a 3D assembly. Within it we have a for loop where we generate the tiles. So we start from 0, we go all the way up to the number of tiles and increment at each step. So here we have our tile elements. Okay, now we're going to have another very similar loop right here. And here we're going to have the face elements, except here we're going to have J instead of I. Okay, this is going to go all the way up to the number of faces. Okay, we'll just leave it for now. Let's start putting stuff on the screen. So face. Now we want to set an edge length. This is going to be 8 ems for the cube. We're going to set a width, a height equal to that. Let's just give it a dummy background. And now we should start seeing something. Now for all div elements, actually for all divs, sorry. Before and after, we have position absolute, and I have my 3D assembly right in the middle, so top 50%, left 50%. Now something else we're going to want to do here is set a margin minus half the edge length, just so that I can have everything in the middle. Okay. Now one more thing I want to do here is set a transform, and I'm going to set it to an initial chain. And this initial chain is rotate x minus 35 degrees, rotate y minus 45 degrees, something like this. And I should start seeing something. Now for all div elements, I also want to have transform style preserve 3D. And now that I've done this, I can start doing a transform here. And I'm going to start with a rotate 3D. And here I have the component of the vector of the rotation axis. This is the component of this vector along the x-axis, so it's going to be I. Along the second axis, J. Along the third axis, always 0. And the angle is a calc. And here I have a multiplier, M, which is 1 by default, times 90 degrees. Okay. So in doing this, here I set I, so this component is 0 initially. J is depending on I, so it's 1 minus I. So when I is 0, J is 1, and when I is 1, J is 0. Now for the last one, last child, I have that I is 1, and this automatically switches J to 0. Now one more thing I'm going to want to have here is a translation, but for now let's set a different width and height, because I only want to have the height to be equal to the width in the case of the end face. So the end face, the one that's square. The other ones are way smaller, so they're just a tenth. So now let's pass on the number of tiles. So style, and I'm going to use it here. And I'm also going to set another constant value, because I don't want to keep recomputing the number of tiles minus 1, the number of tiles minus 1, the number of tiles minus 1. I don't want to keep recomputing it, so I'm just going to set it to this Q constant. So here, when I want to set this height right here, I'm going to use calc, and of course I interpolate the edge length over, and here I have 1 plus that Q constant, and actually it's not going to be just plus that Q constant, it's going to be multiplied with J. Now what this does, so initially J is 1 because I is 0 and 1 minus 0 is 1. So for the first 4 faces for which J is 1, here I'm going to have over 1 plus 1 times the number of tiles minus 1. So that's going to be 1 plus number of tiles minus 1 is going to be the number of tiles. So for the first 4, I'm going to have that the height is the edge length divided by the number of tiles. For the last one, where I is 1 and consequently J is 0, this whole second part here is going to be 0, so it's going to be the edge length over 1, so that's the edge length. So it's going to stay square. Now let's also set this height right here, and let's also use it as a margin. So calc minus half times that height, which I need to interpolate. Sorry, it needs a dollar sign. Okay, now finally I'm going to need a translation here. So translate along the third axis, and this is going to be a z value, and this one I'll be computing in a similar manner as here, except it's going to be just half, and it's going to depend on the other one, on the I. So here I'm going to have I, and here I'm going to just make it half, and this is of course not the height, it's that z value. Okay, now the next thing that I want to do here is change that multiplier, and I don't want to change it for every face in every tile. So I'm going to add a style right here and put the loop within a style, because otherwise if I set it within this loop right here, I'm going to set the same multiplier on the first face for every tile, so that's just repetition, and I want to avoid that. And here also I'm going to avoid the defaults. So if J is different from 1, and also I'm not going to go all the way up to the number of faces, I'm going to avoid the last one as well. So here I have face, nth child, and here I interpolate J plus 1, and my multiplier is of course J, which I need to interpolate there. So now I have my tiles. One more thing I want to do here is set an index. So I'm going to do it in a similar manner. So style index, and it's going to be the loop index I there. Okay, now what I do with that index is here tile, and I set margin top, and this is a calc, and here I have the index minus that constant, that constant Q, half of it, okay, and it's everything times the edge length over the number of tiles. So I got my cube this way. Okay, am I going to need to set anything else? I think I can collapse the markup part. Okay, for now I'll collapse this as well, and this right here as well. And let's set a background, a nicer one. So sorry. Okay, now let's set the before and the after. So I make them cover the whole tile faces. So that's going to be top 0, right 0, bottom 0, and left 0. This makes them cover everything. Content. Okay, now for the background, I'll be taking the second one. So I override that for the after. Okay. Third. Okay, so now that I've done this, I want to change the opacity of these so I can switch stuff. So keyframes, and this is going to be a fading animation. Now, one thing I want to do here, let's go up. So here I want to read the number of layers, and this is the length of the color list, because I have one color for each layer. So now that I know this, I'll be going here, and I have 100% over the number of layers. So here I have opacity 0. Now I set an animation. Now let's do something like this. I have the initial animation time, which is going to be a t0, and let's say it's 1 second. And then I have the animation time I'll be using here, which is the number of layers times that single animation time, t0. So what I use here is animation, the fading animation, t1, steps 1, infinite. So now it keeps switching, as you can see, but I don't want them to switch all at the same time. So I'm going to introduce a delay. So that's going to be a calc. And within this calc, I have a bunch of components which are going to be multiplied with t0. Okay, so these components. First off, I'm going to have a component depending on the face. So t face, and this is 0 initially, minus a component that depends on the layer, tl, and this is 1 initially, and let's also subtract the number of layers, just so that it's all started right from the beginning. Now, what I'll be doing here is the layer, I'm going to be making it 0. Here, the face, make it 2. And I also have for even faces, so that's nth child 2n. So the component for the face is 1 in this case. So this should pretty much do it. Okay, now as you can see, they keep switching, but what I want to do is make sure that the colors don't actually change. So here I'm going to have a second similar animation. So let's take this. So here I have rotate Y, 90 degrees. Let me think. Yeah, 90 degrees sounds just about right. Let's copy paste this animation, and this is going to be rotation. Okay, and this is transform, and I use the initial chain, and then rotate x, let's think, rotate x minus 90 degrees. Okay, and then I have something like this. Rotate z right here, and this is going to be plus 90 degrees. So here I have animation, this rotation, the same animation duration, again steps 1, infinite. Let's see. So now, as you can see, the colors don't change, which is exactly what I want. So the actual animation is going to be on the tiles. So that's going to be keyframes, sorry, animation, and it starts from transform or rotate half a turn, and this is going to be rotate y actually. So this is animation, that, and here I'm going to use T0 infinite. So the thing is, I don't want them all to rotate at the same time. So what I'll be doing here is using a different delay function depending on the index, on the tile index. So first off, I'm going to make a tile progress, and this is a calc which is okay. So this should pretty much do it right here. I think that's good. Okay, so here, sorry. My first component is going to be this, and 0, and this is going to be calc 1 minus that progress, and 1 for the y coordinate of the second point. Okay, so yeah, this works. It looks a bit too fast, so I'll be using 2 right there. And one more thing I don't really like is those lines in between. So I'm going to try something with scaling. So I'm going to have a scaling factor, let's say 0.1. And here I'm going to add a scale 3D. And here I use that scaling factor. And it's really annoying that I have to write it 3 times, but I'll deal with this right now. And here I divide with that scaling factor so it doesn't end up too small. And now it should look a lot better. So yeah, this is pretty much the result I've been after. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have and you want me to be able to do more stuff like this in the future and not end up dying in a trash can, please consider supporting my work. You can do it in one of the ways explained in the description below. That's with a donation. There's going to be a donation link, or you can get me something off my Amazon wishlist, and that would make this kitty very happy. Or you can support the implementation of the cool features used here that are not yet cross-browser. So most of this stuff in terms of features is cross-browser, but Edge doesn't support using calc in certain places, like inside these timing functions, or inside animation delay. It also doesn't support nested calc stuff. And what I'm basically doing here when I'm setting p to this, and then here calc 1 minus p right here, and this is basically nesting calcs. So yeah, that's also not supported by Edge. and this is why it's not going to be cross-browser yet. Also, Firefox might have some sync problems, and you might get some flickering when the switching happens. So that's another issue. Or you can at least share this to show the world what can be done with CSS these days. Because honestly, I think it's pretty damn cool that I only used one set of tiles and I only used 3 sets of keyframes with 4 keyframes in total. So that's 2 keyframes here, 1, 2, 1 here, and 1 more for the fading. And that's all in terms of keyframes. And as you can see, they all animate apparently individually, but that's all from the timing function. So yeah, I think it's pretty damn cool and worth sharing. In any event, thanks for watching.